Pompeii is usually remembered at the moment of its destruction. Ash, fire, panic, bodies caught in motion and then fixed forever in the modern imagination. But that is not how the city understood itself. For almost every person who lived there, Pompeii was not a symbol of death. It was a place of mournings. A place where doors opened onto the street, where shopkeepers swept thresholds, where bakers checked ovens before sunrise, where slaves hauled water, where merchants counted coin, where children learned the rhythms of a busy Roman town, where painted walls and household gods and arguments and jokes and debts and laundry and lust and law all went on with the dull confidence of ordinary life. The eruption of Vesuvius in AD 79 made Pompeii famous, but it also did something stranger and more important. It trapped a living city inside its final interruption. It left behind not only a disaster site, but one of the most detailed records of everyday urban life from the ancient world. That is why Pompeii matters so much. It is not merely a Roman tragedy. It is a Roman city preserved in enough detail to let us move through it almost hour by hour. We can see streets grooved by wheels, stepping stones raised above dirty water, bars built into counters where hot food was sold, election slogans painted on walls, temples, workshops, shrines, gardens, brothels, baths, villas, storerooms, bakeries, skeletons, kitchens, amphorae, mosaics, latrines, carbonized food, tools left where they fell, repairs interrupted by catastrophe, and houses so full of painted color that the idea of the ancient world as white marble begins to collapse the moment Pompeii comes into view. The city gives us the rarest thing in history, not only rulers and battles, not only monuments and official claims, but texture. It gives us the feel of a world. To understand Pompeii properly, we have to do something difficult. We have to stop beginning with the volcano. We have to begin with a place that did not know it was about to become immortal. We have to see the city before ash turned it into evidence. Pompeii stood in Campania, near the Bay of Naples, in one of the most fertile and culturally layered regions of the Roman world. Long before Rome dominated the peninsula, the area had known Greek influence, local Italic traditions, and shifting political control. Pompeii itself had older roots than its Roman fame suggests. It grew through Samnite phases, absorbed external influences, and eventually became deeply entangled with Roman power. After the Social War, Rome made it a colony. Veterans settled. Latin spread more forcefully. Urban space was reworked. Public buildings rose and changed. Local elites adjusted to imperial realities. By the 1st century AD, Pompeii was unmistakably Roman, but like many Roman towns, it remained a layered place, not a blank copy of the capital. That layering mattered. Pompeii was not Rome in miniature. It was its own city, with its own habits, local status games, economic arrangements, neighborhoods, and ambitions. The Forum stood at the public center of civic life, but authority was scattered through houses, businesses, guilds, shrines, taverns, and patronage networks. Some people lived in elegant houses with atria, peristyles, painted reception rooms, and private gardens. Others lived above shops, in cramped service spaces, or in rooms that would never appear in elite literature except as signs of the low and the common. The city contained wealth, but not only wealth. It contained privilege, but not only privilege. It contained slavery, social mobility, commerce, religious devotion, spectacle, and boredom. It contained the ordinary contradictions of Roman urban life. And it was alive in a particularly Roman way. The city was noisy. Animals moved through the streets. Carts passed when they were allowed. Water flowed through fountains and basins where it could. Vendors shouted. Clients visited patrons. Freedmen advertised their success with decoration and display. Political loyalties were painted directly onto walls. Lovers scratched messages. Trades announced themselves by smell long before signage. Wine, oil, fish sauce, baking bread, sweat, sewage, incense, wet plaster, and hot stone formed a civic atmosphere as real as any temple or basilica. Pompeii was not a silent ruin until the eruption made silence permanent. If we imagine a day in Pompeii before the disaster, we should probably begin before dawn. The city did not wake all at once. It stirred in layers. In bakeries, where rotary mills ground grain and ovens consumed fuel, labor began early. Bread was not an abstract staple, it was a daily urgency. Grain had to become flour. Flour had to become dough. Dough had to become loaves before the city's appetite fully arrived. Mills might be worked by enslaved labor or by animals harnessed into turning circles. Heat built slowly. Ash from earlier fires was moved. Wood was stacked. Hands kneaded. The smell of bread, so ordinary it barely deserved comment when life was normal, must have been one of the city's most familiar promises. Elsewhere, domestic households came awake according to rank and need. In wealthier homes, enslaved workers prepared water, opened spaces, swept floors, arranged rooms, and made elite comfort look effortless. In modest homes and mixed-use buildings, labor and family life bled into one another more openly. A workshop might stand beside a sleeping room. A shop might open directly onto a street with only a thin boundary between commerce and domesticity. Pompeii was a place where architecture reflected social structure, but never perfectly. Roman status loved display, yet actual life pushed functions together in ways that make the city feel strikingly practical. Even the grand houses depended on service spaces, storerooms, kitchens, and the bodies of those who maintained them. The first light would have touched painted walls, courtyard basins, household shrines, and street facades differently depending on wealth, direction, and season. Pompeii was a city of color. Frescoes, often astonishingly well preserved, remind us that Roman domestic interiors could be saturated with reds, blacks, yellows, mythological scenes, architectural illusion, delicate motifs, and visual games designed to expand, dignify, or enchant space. Floors carried mosaics. Gardens contained sculpture and water features. Rooms were arranged not only for use, but for impression. To move through the house of a rich Pompeian was to be instructed in rank before a word was spoken. But color also existed beyond elite houses. Painted notices, decorations, shrines, and commercial surfaces made the city visually busy. Pompeii did not wait for modern archaeology to become vivid. It was vivid when lived in. The street outside was another kind of room. Modern visitors often think of streets as neutral passageways between buildings. But in Pompeii, they were social spaces, workspaces, drainage channels, political surfaces, and theaters of exposure. Stone paving carried grooves cut by repeated wheel traffic. Raised stepping stones helped pedestrians cross when water and waste ran down the street. Doorways opened directly into commerce. Counters faced the road. Small shrines or painted protective figures guarded thresholds. Water fountains served neighborhoods. Graffiti covered walls in a way that feels startlingly modern in its informality. Election endorsements, advertisements, jokes, declarations of affection, insults, and casual marks of presence survive in quantities that make Pompeii sound less like a marble civilization and more like a city where people could not resist answering one another in public. That is one reason Pompeii feels intimate to modern viewers. Roman literature often gives us the voices of the educated and the powerful. Pompeii gives us walls that remember everyone else. A voter endorsement on a wall is a fragment of local politics. A graffito about love or sex or resentment is a fragment of mood. Even when names are lost or uncertain, the act of writing remains. It tells us the city was full of people who wanted to be noticed, wanted to persuade, wanted to joke, wanted to claim space, wanted to leave proof that they had been here. The city was not only administered, it was answered back to, and that answer back quality shaped civic life. Pompeii was not some serene classical stage set. It was argumentative, competitive, self-advertising, and socially alert. Local elections mattered because local office brought prestige. Public benefaction mattered because generosity could secure memory and influence. Games mattered because spectacle bound the city together while displaying hierarchy. Religion mattered because gods protected households, trades, neighborhoods, and public institutions. But religion in Pompeii was not a separate sealed category. It was woven into commerce, identity, domestic life, and civic display. If a visitor moved from the quieter residential areas toward the civic core, the Forum would increasingly gather the city into one public frame. Here, administration, commerce, justice, and ceremony overlapped. The Forum was not merely an open square. It was a concentration of functions. Temples, market activity, public business, and social visibility all intersected there. To appear in the Forum was to participate in city life under public scrutiny. One could do business, pursue favor, witness ritual, encounter officials, or simply be seen. Roman urbanism understood the power of centrality, and Pompeii's forum expressed that understanding in stone. Yet even here, the city never stops being practical. Public grandeur did not eliminate everyday use. Porticos sheltered movement. Shops and service activity sat near institutions of rank. Water systems, paving, stairs, and passageways shaped how the square was actually lived. The same is true of the baths, among the most revealing public buildings in Pompeii. Roman baths were not merely places to wash. They were spaces of routine, sociability, display, conversation, and bodily culture. Pompeii had several bathing complexes, each reflecting different moments of growth and ambition. To study them is to see a society in which public life was inseparable from controlled environments of heat, water, leisure, and talk. The baths remind us that Roman cities were infrastructures of habit. Heating systems had to work. Fuel had to be gathered. Water had to be moved. Rooms had to be maintained. Time had to be organized. Even leisure depended on labor. The same is true of theaters, the amphitheater, markets, temples, and the countless modest businesses that kept urban life moving. Pompeii was one of the earliest Roman cities to possess a large amphitheater, and spectacle was part of its civic identity. Gladiatorial events were not constant, but their memory and political use mattered. Public entertainment linked local pride, elite sponsorship, popular pleasure, and imperial culture in a single arena. A city that could host games could display itself to itself. This matters because Pompeii was not a backwater frozen in quaintness before the volcano arrived. It was connected to trade, to Roman law, to regional agriculture, to imperial culture, to Mediterranean habits of production and consumption. Amphorae moved goods. Wine and oil circulated. Fish sauce traveled. Slaves were bought and sold. Free people built fortunes and reputations. The city's walls enclosed something unmistakably local, but its economy and social language were tied to a much wider world. One of the clearest ways to grasp this wider world is through food and drink. Pompeii was full of places where prepared food could be bought and consumed, the now famous thermopolia with counters fitted for containers. These were not quaint curiosities. They were part of how urban life functioned. Not every household prepared every meal in isolation. Work, space, status, and convenience all shaped eating habits. Bread, wine, legumes, olives, fish products, fruits, and cooked dishes moved through daily life in varied combinations depending on wealth and opportunity. Carbonized loaves, cookware, storage jars, and serving spaces bring this world close enough to smell. Wine in particular saturated social life. Taverns and bars were places of refreshment, but also of class mixture, gossip, bargaining, and risk. Respectable literature often looked down on such spaces, but archaeology reminds us that cities run on places where idealized hierarchy becomes messy. Pompeii's bars and eating places were not side notes to urban life. They were among its engines. There, laborers and travelers and locals, and perhaps even slaves on errands crossed paths. Information moved with drink. So did reputation. So did trouble. The same city that offered elegant triclinia for elite dining also offered counters open to the street. That contrast is part of Pompeii's social truth. Roman society loved status differentiation, but urban density produced shared infrastructures and overlapping worlds. An aristocratic dinner and a quick hot meal from a street-facing counter belonged to the same city. So did a lavish peristyle garden and a cramped upper room. So did a mosaic of refined myth and a graffito about somebody's terrible sex life. Pompeii survives so powerfully because it does not let us keep the Roman world at only one social altitude. And yet it is impossible to talk honestly about Pompeii without talking about slavery. The city's elegance, productivity, and convenience depended heavily on unfree labor. Enslaved people cooked, cleaned, carried, milled, poured, served, organized, maintained, obeyed, endured, and sometimes managed significant responsibilities within households or businesses. Some were visible in public labor. Others worked inside domestic spaces so fully that elite comfort seemed spontaneous. Some may have had skilled roles. Some hoped for manumission. Some lived under harsh conditions that no fresco can soften. The archaeology of Pompeii preserves objects and spaces more easily than interior suffering, but the city is unintelligible without slavery. At the same time, Roman slavery existed in a social world where free people could become economically active and sometimes strikingly successful. Pompeii preserves traces of social mobility that Roman elites did not always admire but could not erase. Freedmen and freedwomen appear in inscriptions, tombs, business life, and domestic display. This is one reason Pompeii is socially interesting rather than merely picturesque. It contains a hierarchy, but not a static one. Wealth, patronage, law, birth, gender, and status intersected in ways that made everyday life highly legible to contemporaries, but more difficult for us to simplify. The city was full of gradations. Gender, too, worked through a web of expectation and improvisation. Roman patriarchy was real, public, and structuring, but women in Pompeii appear in religious roles, domestic management, business association, property arrangements, inscriptions, portraiture, and public memory more visibly than older simplified narratives once suggested. Some elite women shaped households that were themselves political theaters. Some women engaged in business. Some appear through jewelry, rooms, writing tools, and bodily traces that remind us that no city is populated only by the men its formal institutions foreground. Pompeii was made daily by women as much as by men, though power was unevenly distributed. Children, too, are part of the city once we stop looking only for monuments. Toys, room sizes, schooling traces, household arrangements, and the sheer fact of family life remind us that Pompeii was not a stage for adult history alone. It was a place where people grew up into Roman habits. They learned where to walk, how to greet, whom to respect, what gods to honor, what jokes to tell, what dangers to ignore, and what ambitions to nurture. That learning process is part of what the eruption interrupted. A city is never only its buildings. It is the transmission of ordinary expectations. Pompeii preserves the shell and, in fragments, the training of life inside it. But by the time Vesuvius destroyed Pompeii, the city was already living through disruption. In AD 62, a major earthquake damaged Pompeii and the surrounding region. Repair, rebuilding, improvisation, and adaptation followed. This matters enormously. The city destroyed in AD 79 was not a perfectly stable urban organism frozen at a random instant of normality. It was a city still recovering, rebuilding, and reconfiguring after serious seismic damage. In some places, repairs were complete. In others, they were ongoing. In still others, construction, decoration, and structural work remained visibly unfinished. The official archaeological guide even suggests that when the eruption buried the city, it sealed what looked in part like an open construction site. That detail changes the mood of the city. Pompeii was not merely interrupted in habit. It was interrupted in restoration. A rebuilding city is a particularly revealing city. Earthquake damage exposes weaknesses, redistributes wealth, opens opportunities, delays projects, and shifts labor. Some owners could afford repairs or reinvention. Others could not. Public and private structures alike bore the marks of decision and postponement. New decorative programs appeared in some homes. Older arrangements were modified. Some buildings may have remained compromised. To walk Pompeii in the years before the eruption would have been to see not only the ordinary life of a Roman town, but a town negotiating memory of disaster without yet imagining the greater one ahead. This matters because it sharpens one of Pompeii's deepest lessons. Cities do not die only when they are destroyed. They also reveal themselves most clearly when they are under pressure. The years after the earthquake and before the eruption show a city still economically and socially alive, still full of labor and display and appetite, but already carrying the knowledge that nature could tear through masonry and routine without warning. If later generations have imagined Pompeii's inhabitants as complacent victims living in picturesque ignorance beneath a volcano, the archaeological evidence suggests something more complex. They knew instability. They had lived through tremors. They repaired. They continued. What they did not know was how absolute the next event would be. And then the volcano. We know the eruption partly through archaeology and partly through one of antiquity's most extraordinary eyewitness accounts. The letters of Pliny the Younger, who described the disaster to Tacitus, and in doing so gave history both narrative detail and a model of observation under catastrophe. There remain debates about the precise date within the year, and scholarship continues to refine the chronology, but the broad sequence is clear. Vesuvius erupted violently in AD 79. An immense column of ash, pumice, and gas rose above the mountain. Material began to rain down. The sky changed. The ordinary day was broken into phases of dread. For Pompeii, the first great danger was not immediate fiery annihilation, but a falling assault of pumice and ash. Roofs were burdened. Streets accumulated debris. Movement became harder. Visibility changed. Noise increased. Panic would not necessarily have arrived all at once. Confusion often comes first, especially when a disaster exceeds any ordinary category of expectation. People gathered belongings. Some fled early. Some stayed inside. Some tried to protect property. Some hoped the event would pass. Some perhaps had no means of easy escape. Families were separated by errands, work, distance, or indecision. Animals panicked. Slaves and masters made choices under pressure not all of them would have freely chosen in calm. One of the most haunting things about Pompeii is that the city was not destroyed in a single instant visible to everyone in the same way. It was consumed in stages. Ash fall, roof collapse, suffocating atmosphere, darkness, and later pyroclastic surges turned danger from environmental disturbance into absolute finality. That phase destruction helps explain why Pompeii preserves such varied traces of human response. Some bodies were found in groups, others alone. Some were near doors, courtyards, streets, or storage areas. Some may have been trying to flee. Others may have hoped to survive indoors. The city's final hours were not a single drama, but thousands of local decisions under impossible conditions. Imagine the sound. Pumice striking roof tiles. Animals screaming. Wooden elements cracking. Orders shouted and lost. Children crying. The changing roar of the mountain. The psychological violence of darkness at the wrong hour. Pompeii in literature often becomes visual, but the true terror must also have been acoustic and respiratory. Air itself had become uncertain. Light itself had become unstable. Time itself had become hard to measure. If we keep faith with the title One Day in a Roman City, then this is the point where the ordinary day turns against itself. Morning habits become liabilities. The house that sheltered now traps. The street that connected now clogs. The roof that enclosed now threatens to fall. The city's dense social world, so useful in life, becomes a maze in catastrophe. Familiarity can kill as efficiently as ignorance when the environment changes faster than thought. Some Pompeians surely escaped. The city's dead are not the entire city. The archaeological record is shaped by who remained, who returned, who was trapped, who could not leave, and where later excavators found voids, bones, or traces. But enough people died in and around Pompeii to make the city one of history's most powerful documents of sudden civic death. Pyroclastic surges and flows, carrying superheated gas, ash, and debris, transformed the disaster from heavy burial into lethal shock. This is where modern understanding has shifted the older popular image. Pompeii was not simply buried gently beneath falling ash while people posed into plaster. Many deaths came through a far more violent volcanic process. And yet the famous casts matter, even if they sometimes distort understanding. They are not ancient sculptures of the dead. They are 19th century archaeological inventions made by pouring plaster into voids left in hardened deposits after bodies decayed. Giuseppe Fiorelli's method turned absence into form. The resulting casts are powerful because they preserve posture and the terrible intimacy of final moments. But they are also modern acts of interpretation. They helped create the Pompeii that the modern world thinks it knows. Not just a lost city, but a city of bodies caught in time. That afterlife of representation is part of the story. Pompeii is not only what the Romans lived or how they died. It is also how later centuries learned to look at ancient disaster. The material burial itself was uneven. Pumice and ash fell differently in different areas. Buildings failed in different sequences. The city's location relative to the volcano, wind, and topography mattered. Herculaneum, by contrast, suffered a different pattern of destruction, and comparing the two sites helps modern researchers refine the chronology of the eruption. But Pompeii occupies such a strong place in memory because its preservation is both urban and legible. Streets, wall paintings, shops, graffiti, houses, public buildings, human remains, and volcanic layers all combine into a narrative city. It is possible to move through Pompeii and feel not merely that a Roman city existed, but that it had just been interrupted moments before our arrival, even though nearly 2 millennia divide us from its last day. After the eruption, the city vanished. Not morally, not in memory perhaps for every nearby inhabitant, but physically enough that it passed out of ordinary landscape knowledge. The mountain remained. Settlements continued elsewhere. Empires rose and fell. Languages changed. Christianity spread. Medieval worlds formed. Fields were worked above what had once been streets. Pompeii was not waiting in silence for modern tourists. It was absent. Buried cities do not survive in public imagination by default. They survive, if at all, through chance, rumor, traces, and eventually excavation. The rediscovery of Pompeii unfolded gradually and imperfectly. Early modern encounters with buried remains did not immediately generate the systematic archaeology that later generations would expect. Excavation in the 18th century under Bourbon rule often resembled treasure hunting as much as science. Objects were sought. Spectacle mattered. Context could be damaged or lost. This, too, is part of the Pompeii story. The city was not only buried by a volcano, it was also recovered by centuries with very different ideas about what ancient remains were for. Some wanted marbles and paintings. Some wanted royal prestige. Some wanted historical understanding. These motives overlapped, collided, and evolved. Over time, methods improved. Fiorelli's 19th century innovations in excavation and recording, including the division of the city into regiones and insulae, created a system still fundamental to how Pompeii is organized and studied. Archaeology became more attentive to context, sequence, and daily life, not only to elite treasure. More recently, conservation, scientific analysis, excavation, and public interpretation have continued to reshape what Pompeii can tell us. The city is not a finished archive. It is an active site of research, restoration, and argument. New finds still emerge. Old assumptions are revised. Even the date of the eruption and details of victims' final hours continue to be studied and debated. That ongoing research is one reason Pompeii remains so alive. It is not only a famous site. It is a laboratory for asking how ancient urban societies actually worked. Domestic life, diet, labor, slavery, religion, trade, social mobility, decoration, infrastructure, sexuality, climate, volcanic disaster, and the ethics of excavation all meet there. Few ancient sites permit such a dense conversation between text, artifact, architecture, and human remains. Pompeii lets us test stories against streets. What, then, was daily life really like in Pompeii? It depends on who you were. That answer may sound obvious, but it is the beginning of accuracy. An elite male householder experienced the city differently from an enslaved girl in his household, from a baker's assistant, from a tavern keeper, from a prostitute, from a freedman eager to display new status, from a market laborer, from a child, from a priestess, from a mule driver, from a laundress, from a craftsman renting workspace, from a traveler passing through, or from a farmer bringing produce into town. The city contained all these lives and more. Pompeii's gift to us is that it refuses to let Roman life remain singular. Take the houses. Modern viewers are often captivated by the Grand Domus, the House of the Faun, the House of the Vetii, the Villa of the Mysteries, and others rich with frescoes and spatial sophistication. These houses matter because they reveal elite ideals, patronage, display, and aesthetic ambition. But they can mislead if we let them stand for everyone. Pompeii also contained more modest dwellings, rented rooms, shops with back rooms, workshops integrated with living quarters, and spaces where privacy and status were nothing like what the richest houses performed. Roman domesticity was stratified, and the city preserves that stratification in stone. The houses also remind us that domestic space was social theater. The atrium presented one version of household order. The tablinum mediated status and visibility. The peristyle could become a zone of cultivated beauty. Dining rooms staged hierarchy. Wall paintings projected literary taste, mythological literacy, cosmopolitan aspiration, and confidence. Domestic architecture in Pompeii was not only about shelter. It was about what others should think upon entering. Even in a city of public streets, reputation began at the threshold. Yet thresholds in Pompeii were porous. Work entered homes. Clients entered homes. Slaves moved through homes. Business could be conducted in or from homes. Religion lived in household shrines. Water, food, storage, and waste made every refined room dependent on practical systems. This is why Pompeii feels so modern at moments. It shows that elegance is usually only the visible upper layer of labor, maintenance, and social inequality. The same interplay of refinement and function appears in Pompeii's businesses. The city's bakeries, dyeing facilities, laundries, bars, and workshops demonstrate that Roman urban life depended on specialized labor and organized production at a scale modern people often underestimate. Fulling, for example, the cleaning and finishing of cloth, was chemically unpleasant and physically demanding, yet crucial. Bread production was likewise intensive. Metalwork, woodwork, food service, and other trades all left material traces. The city was a consumer environment, but consumers require producers close at hand. There is a temptation to romanticize the visible traces of craft. The worn mills, the counters, the ovens, the tools. They can seem charming in the safety of archaeology. But life inside those spaces was work, often repetitive and exhausting. In a hot bakery or a foul-smelling workshop, Roman urban life was less noble than functional. Pompeii helps correct the old distortion that antiquity belongs mostly to marble, rhetoric, and emperors. It belonged equally to laboring bodies, to supply chains, to dirt, to repair. And repair matters because the city was full of maintenance before the eruption. Streets needed clearing. Water systems needed managing. Buildings needed patching. Earthquake damage needed addressing. Decorative schemes needed finishing. Shopfronts needed repainting. Urban life is sustained not by monuments alone, but by constant small acts that prevent the built environment from sliding toward decay. Pompeii catches those acts midstream. Scaffolding, interrupted repairs, unfinished walls, altered plans. These all tell us the city was not complete. No city ever is. The eruption fossilized incompletion itself. That incompletion gives Pompeii a special poignancy. The city did not end in a golden age. It ended in process. Houses were being adapted. Businesses were operating. Restorations were underway. Public and private ambitions had not yet run their course. This is closer to how cities actually die. They do not usually die at their most symbolically finished. They die amid ordinary continuation. That is one reason Pompeii's preservation feels so unsettling. It traps life not at a ceremonial climax, but in the middle of becoming something else. Pompeii also forces us to confront Roman sexuality without the filters later moral systems often impose. Erotic paintings, brothel spaces, graffiti, and domestic imagery have all contributed to the site's reputation as frank, even scandalous. But it is important not to turn this into simple sensationalism. Roman sexual culture was structured by power, status, gender, and slavery in ways very different from modern ideals of mutuality or private identity. Pompeii preserves evidence not just of desire, but of social hierarchy expressed through desire. To study erotic material, there is not merely to admire Roman openness. It is to ask how bodies were viewed, used, decorated, sold, and imagined in a society comfortable making explicit what later viewers preferred to hide, while preserving many brutal inequalities beneath that explicitness. Religion was equally woven into all this. Temples, shrines, lauraria, offerings, and ritual habits filled the city at multiple scales. A Roman city did not require modern separation between sacred and secular space. Gods protected homes, crossroads, trades, families, political institutions, and collective welfare. The Temple of Apollo, the Temple of Jupiter, the cult of Isis, domestic shrines and houses, painted serpents, and protective imagery near lauraria all point to a spiritual life distributed through both public and private space. Religion in Pompeii was visible, pragmatic, and continuous. People did not necessarily pause and say, "Now I am entering religion." They were already inside it. That religious density matters for the eruption because disasters are never experienced only physically. They are interpreted. What does it mean when the mountain erupts and the sky turns wrong, and the city's god seems silent or distant or suddenly terrifyingly active? We cannot recover every mind, but we can say with confidence that the final hours of Pompeii were not merely geological for those who lived them. They were moral, cosmic, and spiritual as well. The end of the world is always also a crisis of meaning. Pliny the Younger, writing as an observer of catastrophe from across the bay, gives us one version of that meaning crisis in classical prose. But ordinary Pompeians had no such literary distance. They had falling stone, collapsing roofs, darkened air, and decisions measured in minutes. Some may have prayed, some may have cursed, some may have thought only of the nearest door. The city that archaeology returns to us is rich in materials, but the inner language of its final day remains partly beyond recovery. That gap, the difference between preserved body and lost thought, is one of Pompeii's deepest silences. The silence is sharpened by how loudly the site speaks in every other way. Walk through Pompeii today, and the city seems almost aggressively available to interpretation. There are streets to follow, house plans to compare, shops to classify, frescoes to decode, inscriptions to map, body positions to analyze, stratigraphy to read. The city appears to offer itself up. Yet this abundance can be deceptive. Preservation is not completeness. What survives does so by chance, by material conditions, by excavation history, by conservation priorities, and by the questions archaeologists have chosen to ask. Many upper floors vanished. Wooden elements burned or rotted. Fabrics mostly disappeared except in traces. Human relationships survive unevenly. Sound is gone. Smell must be imagined. Political nuance can disappear if inscriptions are read too simply. Bodies preserve posture, but not intention. That is why the best way to understand Pompeii is not as a perfect time capsule, but as a damaged archive with unusual density. It preserves enough to be astonishing, but not enough to end interpretation. In that sense, Pompeii is ideal for history. It gives us more than we usually have and less than we desperately want. We can reconstruct daily rhythms, but not hear every conversation. We can map houses, but not feel every hierarchy equally from within. We can identify a bakery, a tavern, a shrine, an elite dining room, a workshop, a brothel, a bath, a market area, a fountain, a stable, a garden, a street crossing. We can know a great deal. We cannot know all. Still, what we can know is transformative. We know that Roman towns were not all marble gravitas. They were cluttered, commercial, painted, noisy, sensual, and stratified. We know that the Roman world was not inhabited only by literary elites and imperial officials. It was inhabited by bakers, bar workers, laundresses, laborers, enslaved people, prostitutes, children, patrons, clients, and people whose names survive only because they scratched them into a wall or died in the path of ash. We know that public life and private life bled into one another. We know that disasters preserve not merely endings, but patterns of life. And we know that archaeology can change moral imagination by making distant people suddenly legible as neighbors in routine rather than just ancestors in abstraction. Pompeii also changes how we think about time. Ancient history is often taught through long durations, republic to empire, conquest to administration, centuries unfolding through systems. Pompeii condenses time differently. It allows us to think in rooms, streets, and hours. This room was decorated. That wall was patched. This loaf was in an oven. That tool was left where someone last used it. This staircase led upward into a part of life, now mostly gone. That inscription was painted because an election mattered enough to someone. This body reached for a gesture we can no longer hear. The city brings macro history down to human scale. And then, because it was buried, it sends human scale back up into macro history. The eruption of Vesuvius is not only a local tragedy. It is one of the most famous interactions between environment and society in the ancient world. It shows how geology and urban density can collide with finality. It shows how ordinary confidence and routine can coexist with underlying instability. It shows how the natural world is never merely scenery around civilization. In Roman Campania, the fertile soil and beautiful setting that sustained settlement were tied to volcanic power. The same mountain that made abundance possible also made destruction inevitable. even if not predictable in its exact timing. This tension between fertility and danger is central to the broader Bay of Naples landscape. Vesuvius gave richness and took life. Campania's agricultural wealth, social density, and attractiveness were not mistakes. They were rational responses to a fertile region. People did not live there because they were fools. They lived there because the land rewarded them, until it did not. Pompeii therefore resists the lazy moral that victims simply ignored obvious warning. Human beings everywhere normalize risk when life depends on the benefits that accompany it. That is as true now as it was then. Even the earthquake of AD 62 fits this pattern. Damage did not empty the city. Repair followed. That is what people do. They rebuild in place because place contains memory, investment, routine, and need. Pompeii teaches not only the fragility of cities, but the stubbornness of urban life. The city survived one major disaster and continued. That continuation is part of why the second disaster became so absolute. A city that has already absorbed shock is less likely to imagine total erasure next time. People know disruption. They do not necessarily know apocalypse. Modern Pompeii tourism has sometimes flattened all of this into a few familiar images. The casts, the brothel, the dog mosaic that says beware, the villas, the volcano in the distance. Those images are not false, but they are selective. The truest way to approach Pompeii is not as a curiosity cabinet of famous sites. It is as a city whose ordinary density changed the study of antiquity. The plaster casts are affecting because they confront us with death, but the city's deeper gift lies in the way it preserves life before death. The warning mosaic matters, but so do drains, mills, counters, graffiti, thresholds, repairs, and walls whose paintings were meant to impress living guests, not future archaeologists. That is why one day in a Roman city is a useful frame. It forces us to ask not only how the city died, but how it passed an ordinary morning before history tore through it. Who bought bread? Who opened shutters? Who carried water? Who dressed patrons? Who calculated accounts? Who wrote on walls? Who prayed? Who made love? Who argued over politics? Who worked in heat? Who swept? Who waited? Who hoped to rise socially? Who hoped merely to keep the day predictable? Pompeii is most moving when we remember that the city's victims did not think they were living inside the preface to a documentary. They thought they were living Tuesday or something like it. And because they did, Pompeii is one of the strongest antidotes to the false distance of antiquity. Ancient people are often made to seem ceremonially different from us. Pompeii narrows that gap, not by pretending the Romans were modern. They were not, but by reminding us that the infrastructure of human life is remarkably durable. Appetite, status anxiety, repair work, local politics, family obligation, labor, spectacle, piety, fatigue, commercial competition, gossip, desire, and the hope that tomorrow will resemble today enough to manage. This is also why the site remains emotionally volatile. It is not only educational. It is intimate in a way that many ancient ruins are not. A shattered temple can inspire awe. A city block with shops, bedrooms, graffiti, and cooking spaces can inspire recognition. Recognition is more destabilizing than awe. It invites identification. It asks whether our own cities, with all their routines and assumptions of continuity, are also only one interruption away from becoming archaeological arguments. The afterlife of Pompeii in art, literature, film, and public memory has been vast because the site sits at the crossroads of several irresistible human fascinations: disaster, preservation, voyeurism, daily life, death, color, eroticism, and the moral thrill of seeing a world caught unready. Painters, novelists, filmmakers, and museum curators have all made their own Pompeiis. Some emphasize terror, some emphasize beauty, some dwell on sensuality or decadence. Some use the city as a metaphor for civilizations living over hidden violence. Some turn it into a morality play about luxury. Some into a hymn to archaeology itself. But the real city is stronger than most of those simplifications. It is neither purely decadent nor purely innocent. It was not a paradise of sensual Roman pleasure interrupted by divine punishment, nor merely a cautionary tale about geological indifference. It was a functioning town in a rich region of the Roman Empire, full of ordinary inequality and ordinary vitality, reshaped by an earthquake, then overwhelmed by an eruption. If that sounds less dramatic than myth, that is only because truth often resists the clean lines of allegory. In fact, the truth is more affecting. A city of ordinary people, with all the uneven dignity and cruelty of daily life, was erased in stages and then preserved enough that we can still walk its streets. The archaeological park today carries this burden of visibility. It must preserve, interpret, research, and present a site both famous and fragile. Exposure threatens what burial protected. Tourism creates revenue and pressure. Conservation is expensive, endless, and often controversial. Excavation reveals and endangers at the same time. Every newly opened room becomes both knowledge and responsibility. In this sense, Pompeii is still unfinished. Not in the Roman sense of the years after the earthquake, but in the modern sense that the city remains under active negotiation between scholarship, public fascination, and material vulnerability. That unfinished modern condition mirrors the city's ancient one more closely than we might expect. Pompeii before the eruption was incomplete. Pompeii after excavation is also incomplete. Both versions are shaped by interruption, repair, and ambition. We inherit not a finished object, but a continuing task. How to see the city whole enough to honor it, while never pretending that wholeness has been fully restored. So let us return, at the end, to the title. One day in a Roman city. Which day? In one sense, the last day. In another, any day. The greatness of Pompeii is that its last day lets us glimpse countless earlier ones. The baker beginning before dawn. The fountain splashing in a courtyard. The bar counter ready for customers. The street opening toward the forum. The painted room waiting for guests. The workshop preparing another hour of labor. The election notice drying on a wall. The household shrine receiving habitual reverence. The amphitheater standing as a promise of spectacle. The city carrying on, not because it was destined, but because people always carry on until something stops them. When Vesuvius erupted, it did not destroy an abstract civilization. It destroyed mornings, habits, repairs, debts, ambitions, meals, errands, appointments, unfinished conversations, and hopes scaled to the size of the next few days. That is why Pompeii feels so close. It is not only that we know the disaster, it is that we recognize the structure of what was lost. A city is made of repeated acts that seem too ordinary to memorialize, until catastrophe does the memorializing for us. The buried city also left behind an ethical question. How should the dead be looked at? The casts, the skeletons, the rooms, the domestic remains. These attract because they are intimate, but intimacy can slide into consumption. To study Pompeii responsibly is to resist turning other people's final suffering into theatrical scenery. The right response is not refusal to look, but discipline in looking. See the casts, yes, but also the kitchens. See the dead, but also the bread. See the painted myths, but also the drains and workrooms. See the catastrophe, but do not allow the catastrophe to erase the city that existed before it. For that earlier city is what Pompeii most magnificently preserves. It preserves not only the end of Roman life under Vesuvius, but the shape of Roman life before the mountain broke it. It preserves evidence that ancient history was once immediate weather and local argument and practical labor. It preserves the idea that an empire was built not only by legions and emperors, but by households, street corners, public baths, tavern counters, workshop routines, and the millions of small acts through which people inhabit cities without imagining that history is watching. Pompeii endures because it lets us watch anyway. It lets us walk into the Roman world not through grand abstraction, but through one city whose streets still remember footsteps. It lets us see how color lived on walls, how commerce opened to the road, how politics was painted in public, how religion nested in domestic corners, how class and labor shaped architecture, how repair followed damage, and how disaster finally remade everything. And it leaves us with a final, disquieting truth. The people of Pompeii did not know they were living in a city that the future would study as the best preserved ordinary day of Roman life. They did not know their counters, mills, shrines, paintings, jokes, and final gestures would one day teach the world how Rome felt below the level of empire. They were simply living. That is what makes Pompeii so powerful. It was a city of ordinary life made extraordinary not by how it lived, but by how suddenly it was forced to stop. A Roman city also announces itself through movement between public and private heat. Bathing was not an optional luxury confined to elites. In Pompeii, the baths helped organize the civic day. People came not only to wash but to talk, to listen, to compare status, to make themselves visible, to encounter clients or associates, and to occupy the social middle ground between the intimacy of the house and the exposure of the street. Heated rooms, warm rooms, cold plunge spaces, exercise areas, changing rooms, service corridors, furnaces, and water systems all had to cooperate to make that ritual appear seamless. To understand the baths is to understand Rome's genius for turning infrastructure into social habit. A bath complex was a machine for producing civilization in bodily form. That bodily form mattered because Roman identity was performed physically. Cleanliness, scent, oils, posture, clothing, and the management of one's body all helped encode rank and self-respect. Pompeii's baths therefore belong in the same story as its painted houses and street commerce. They reveal a culture in which being seen was never only visual. It was also tactile and atmospheric. Heat, steam, scraped skin, polished stone, damp air, and conversation formed part of what the city felt like from the inside. Modern viewers often think of ancient ruins as dry, but Pompeian life was full of moisture, residue, smell, and bodily maintenance. A city of baths is a city of contact. Political life in Pompeii was likewise more local and more visible than many people expect from ancient history. Election notices painted onto walls make this plain. Candidates were endorsed by groups, neighbors, occupational interests, and sometimes apparently by people whose sincerity modern readers may question. Whether playful or earnest, these wall messages show that local office mattered enough to claim public surfaces and demand attention. Rome was an empire, yes, but empire was inhabited through towns where municipal ambition remained vivid. To hold office locally was to accumulate prestige, reciprocity, and influence in a world where social standing depended on public recognition as much as on private wealth. The walls also preserve the argumentative informality of city life. Graffiti do not ask permission to be eloquent. They complain, brag, flirt, insult, remember, and joke. This is not trivial evidence. It is democracy of a sort, not political equality, certainly, but a broad right to leave marks in shared space. The graffiti remind us that Roman cities were not mute settings for elite action. They were constantly rewritten by the hands of their inhabitants. Pompeii survives not only as built architecture, but as conversation fossilized on plaster. That is why the city feels loud even when standing silent. There is also a temptation to imagine Pompeii's elite houses as isolated islands of refinement above the city's rougher life. But even the most impressive houses were threaded into public visibility. The House of the Faun, the House of the Vetii, and other celebrated residences were not palaces hidden behind modern concepts of privacy. They were urban performances. Visitors entered. Clients arrived. Business could be conducted. Status could be measured. Domestic religion could be staged. Paintings could educate or impress. Gardens could calm and signal luxury. To cross from the street into one of these homes was not to leave politics behind. It was to enter politics in domestic costume. The House of the Vetii is especially revealing in this regard because it is so often discussed as a monument of freedman wealth. Whether every older interpretation about its owners has held or shifted under modern scholarship, the house still speaks loudly about aspiration. Its decoration is not shy. Mythological scenes, controlled perspectives, fine surfaces, and confident organization declare that cultural capital can be acquired, displayed, and made architectural. Pompeii is full of such self-advertisement. The city is not embarrassed by ambition. It paints ambition on walls and sets fountains in courtyards to make sure guests understand what they are looking at. At the other end of the social scale, work leaves its own architectural signatures. A Phalanca does not feel like an elite dining room. A bakery does not feel like a shrine. A bar does not feel like a peristyle garden. Pompeii preserves this difference beautifully. You can move from one mode of life to another in the space of a short walk. That proximity matters. Roman hierarchy did not require strict zoning in the modern sense. Production, service, domesticity, piety, entertainment, and status display could lie side by side. This created a city of sharp transitions. A narrow doorway might separate wealth from labor, but the separation was never complete. Smell crossed it. Sound crossed it. Enslaved bodies crossed it constantly. These abrupt transitions also make Pompeii a masterclass in urban realism. Modern myth sometimes imagines the ancient world as organized according to a clean symbolic order. Pompeii says otherwise. It was coherent, yes, but the coherence was lived, not diagrammatic. Its order emerged from repeated use, not from the tidy abstraction of later textbook diagrams. People knew how to navigate it because they belonged to its rhythms. Archaeology reveals those rhythms not as philosophy, but as where patterns, reused thresholds, altered walls, patched masonry, kitchen residues, stable floors, drainage routes, and service annexes tucked behind spaces of display. When the eruption came, those same urban transitions became mortal traps or possible routes of escape. A narrow stairway that had connected upper rooms to a courtyard could become a deadly choke point. A doorway opening toward the street could become a last chance. A roofed interior could shield someone from pumice for hours, then collapse and kill them. A street that had guided wheels and pedestrians for decades could fill with debris and panic. This is why the city's plan matters so much to the disaster narrative. The eruption did not strike an abstract map. It struck a tightly organized human environment full of decisions already made by generations of construction and habit. The sequence of destruction also means that the city's famous finality was produced by time, not only by force. Hours matter in Pompeii. There was time to react, but not enough time to understand. There was time to gather things, but not enough to gather certainty. There was time for some to flee and for others to delay just long enough to die. That temporal unevenness is one reason the site still feels haunted by interrupted intention. We are not only looking at death, we are looking at decisions overtaken by a faster process than the human mind can comfortably narrate while living through it. Pliny the Younger's letters remain indispensable partly because they model how observers tried to make sense of the impossible in real time. His description of the cloud rising in the shape of a pine tree is famous because it combines literary control with empirical astonishment. He and his uncle, Pliny the Elder, saw the disaster from across the bay. One went toward danger out of curiosity, duty, and command, and never returned. The younger Pliny later turned memory into text. That transformation from shock into narrative is part of the history of Pompeii itself. The disaster entered culture almost immediately not only as destruction, but as description. Yet the letters, however precious, should not swallow the city. They are one viewpoint, not Pompeii's total voice. The archaeology widens the frame. It shows what the letters could not: rooms, counters, food, wall colors, spatial arrangements, unfinished repairs, storage patterns, the behavior of volcanic layers, the varied positions of the dead, the marks of routine so powerful that they remained visible through catastrophe. If Pliny gives us language, Pompeii gives us the material world that language tries to catch. The combination is extraordinarily rare. Few ancient disasters can be read at both scales at once. Modern excavations have repeatedly reminded us that Pompeii is not done surprising us. New victims emerge. New rooms are opened. Better conservation changes what can be seen. Scientific techniques refine old assumptions about diet, movement, building phases, and the eruption sequence. Even seemingly familiar features, like the casts, continue to generate new ethical and technical discussion. A site this famous might be expected to have given up all its major secrets long ago. Instead, it keeps demonstrating that archaeology is not merely the recovery of old answers. It is the disciplined creation of better questions. That is also why the city must be approached with humility. Every generation believes it has finally understood Pompeii, and every generation is partly wrong. Early excavators overprized treasures. Later interpreters sometimes over-romanticized domestic life. Touristic storytelling simplified social complexity. Popular culture exaggerated decadence or froze the city into one moralizing tableau. More recent scholarship has tried to recover work, inequality, unfinished rebuilding, non-elite lives, and the material dynamism of a city that was not all villas and murals. The more closely one studies Pompeii, the less it looks like a single story and the more it looks like an argument among many forms of evidence. Pompeii's continuing power, then, lies not only in preservation but in proportion. It is large enough to feel like a city, not just a house or a shrine. It is detailed enough to make macrohistory intimate. It is dramatic enough to command the imagination and ordinary enough to teach restraint. It contains spectacle, but it punishes anyone who looks only for spectacle. A visitor can come seeking volcanic apocalypse and leave thinking instead about bread distribution, drainage, elections, slavery, wall painting, domestic religion, and the labor hidden inside Roman comfort. That is an extraordinary achievement for any archaeological site. In the end, Pompeii is one of the clearest demonstrations that the ancient world was not made of abstractions. It was made of repeated acts by people who assumed their world, however damaged, would continue tomorrow. Their city gave them enough reason to believe it. The streets were still there. The ovens still worked. Elections still mattered. Repairs were still underway. The baths still heated. The bars still served. The shrines still received reverence. The market still organized hunger into purchase. The mountain above them was part of the landscape, not yet the author of their final chapter. And then, in a span of terror too short for a city's self-understanding to adjust, everything changed.